Okay, so for this video, we're going to talk about measurements. We're going to learn how to measure things. We're going to learn how to draw objects or lines with specific measurements. So first, I want you to make sure you have a blank screen. Make sure also that you have your toolbars set to large tool set, just so that you get used to that. Now, before we begin, I wanted to bring your attention down to the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. There is a box that says measurements. This measurements box lets you see what measurements of the object or shape are actually being input. We are never going to be clicking in this box, so I want to set that into your minds right now. But you can look down at this box to help you reference how large things are. Now, the other thing that I want to show you before you begin learning about this is that right now we're set to using Google SketchUp in feet and inches. And you need to understand the symbols that mean feet and inches, I guess. So when I start drawing a rectangle, and you don't need to do this, just watch. If I start drawing a rectangle, look down in my dimensions. I'll try to make something a little bit easier. Sure. You can see next to where it says dimensions that it's 7 and then a little apostrophe, space, 2, space, 1/8, quotation mark. Then you have a comma and another space. This is a really important thing to understand because as we are creating objects that have specific dimensions, you have to follow that structure. So write this in your notes. Apostrophe equals feet. Quotation mark equals inches. So now let's go ahead and start drawing with some specific measurements. I'm going to start with the line tool. So I want to draw a line along the red axis that is 5 feet long. So here's how we do it. We click to start the drawing, just like anytime you click and let go. And then you can just start dragging away. Now with the line tool, you want to drag away on the axis that you want to draw on. From here, we actually type our dimensions. So if you look down at the bottom right-hand corner where it says length, mine right now says 3 feet, 3/16 inches. If I type a 5 and I put an apostrophe, it changes. Now, I want to make that line 5 feet long. 5 apostrophe equals 5 feet. Then when I'm done typing my measurement, I press enter. And I have a line that's 5 feet. I'm going to go ahead and press my escape. Now, how do I know that it's actually 5 feet? Well, let's use our tape measure. T equals tape measure. And the way the tape measure works, it's kind of tricky. There's this little rivet, little piece of metal at the very tip of the tape measure. And you can see I'm going to hover over with that tip right on the edge of my line. So that little tip, that's the point where you start measuring. So if I click at this endpoint, drag across to the other endpoint, you can see that it equals 5 feet. I get a little message. So that's correct. Okay, so now I want to draw a line straight up from this endpoint, and I want to draw that 4 feet 5 inches. So I'm going to start the process of drawing up on the blue axis. Notice I'm not clicking anything, I'm not holding down my mouse button, I'm free to type. So I'm going to type a 4, press apostrophe, and you need a space to separate your feet from your inches. So space, number 5, and then shift apostrophe, which is your quotation mark. Once I've typed that in, I press enter. And my line jumps to that length. Now let's test it. Tape measure, click at the bottom, scroll up, 4 feet 5 inches. So we're perfect. So let's slide over. This also works with other things, such as rectangles. A rectangle, you have a length and you have a width. So I'm going to click my R and start clicking. And you can see that the length is actually the red axis, or the first button. The width is going to be your second button. Or I'm sorry, your second measurement on your dimensions. So the way this works is once you click, you're just going to start dragging out to show that your rectangle or your square or whatever is being created. And then you begin typing your dimensions. So let's create a rectangle that is 7 feet long by 3 feet 7 inches wide. Okay, so let's start typing. 7 apostrophe feet long, and then to separate the length from the width, we're going to use a comma and a space. Now let's type our width. 3 feet space 5 inches. And if we press enter, it will create our shape for us. There we go. Practice this. Practice creating a square or a rectangle with specific dimensions. Now, I'm going to take this same shape and I want to press my push-pull button. And I'm going to hover over my push-pull. So you can also set specific dimensions with your push-pull. So I'm going to click one time to start push-pulling this object. I'm just in the process. I'm not holding down a mouse button. And I can set how tall or how high I want that object. You can also think of this as the thickness of the object. So let's say I want a wooden board. I'm probably going to make this about 1.5 inches to 2 inches thick. So I'm actually going to go ahead and type 2 and put a quotation mark for 2 inches. I press enter and it jumps to that size. So let's test and let's see how big this shape is. I showed you the tape measure before, but another way you can see dimensions is the tool over here on your large tool set next to your tape measure. It's called your dimension tool. The way this works is you can click from point to point. So I'm going to click on one point, slide down, and click on this other point because I want to measure this width. So I click, and as I drag out, I get some reference lines with the measurement of that edge. I can do the same thing for the length. Click, click, and I can either have it come up, or if I rotate it, I can have it go to the side. I can also dimension my height. Sometimes you need to scroll in. And also, you can just, if you're able to, click the line. The line will get blue. You click on that line, and it will dimension the line for you. So, at this point, you should have an object that has a specific height, a specific length, and a specific width. Use the dimension tool to show those dimensions. In the next couple days, you'll actually be asked to create a series of objects with specific heights, specific widths, showing all of those dimensions. That will be a sort of quiz. So practice this process and be able to do it with just about anything that you work with.